Exactly 3 years ago, over a 2-week stretch of January 13th to January 28th, 2015, I launched my research videos on Anatolian men in Europe. I started with the series working through the Phaistos Disc. I'd always planned on laying a foundation of original research that I could lay proper claim to. Now that I've done that, it's time to switch gears. So, I'm moving away from my magisterial tomes and moving on to short 12 to 15 minute single topic videos. That means there should be a lot more of them. And since I have a green screen and proper video editing software, Final Cut Pro over here, that means I can be more nimble and interactive. It's time to play around, have some fun. I'm very proud of what I've accomplished. My videos don't get a lot of views. I get a lot of thumbs down. And when I send important information on to the people who need to see it, they blow me off. Nevertheless, I stand proud. The videos are going to be quicker and breezier, but that scholarship is always going to be just as good. This is my one promise. I'll use the best sources I can find, and I will treat them as honorably as I can, even when I can't always understand them. Those linguistics textbooks are a bear. Pinky swear. But you know what lesson I've learned really well the last 3 years? It's to not take the way people treat me personally. That's the way strangers treat my entire race. Oh my God, they remember their mistakes. But when it comes to their many accomplishments, everybody suddenly turns stupid. It does not compute, even when the conclusions are blatantly obvious. So there are gaps in their knowledge, which they fill in with idle speculation. Typically that involves giving somebody else credit for our hard work. You don't have to take my word for it, I'll show you. So what I'm going to do in this video real quick is survey some of my finest accomplishments over the last 3 years. Get you excited about what I have coming. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of bitching and moaning, but you'll see why. This is not in my head. But it's nice to know I'm not the one who's crazy. We're going to start with the Indo-European language family. English is part of that. There's also Irish and Russian and German. They are the Iranian languages, including the languages spoken in northern India. There's Greek, which is related to Iranian. And there's Albanian, which might be as old as Greek. And Greek is considered to be the oldest continuously spoken language in the world today. There is a split among linguists. Some believe men like me were the first to speak Indo-European languages, but the majority think men like Thor did. I don't care. They're being sloppy. There's a gap in their knowledge, and when they fill it, we'll talk. Until then, they're all living in castles built on sand. There was a well-known explosion of farming in Europe more than 8,000 years ago. The argument over whether these were natives who learned farming or immigrants who carried it with them has now been settled. It was immigrants, especially to Serbia. When you hear about the Anatolian farmers who might or might not have spoken the first Indo-European language, these are the farmers everyone is talking about. Hold that thought. The culture these farmers created is known as the Starchevo. Meanwhile, about the same time, there was another farmer migration from Anatolia and from further east in the Levant. These people went from Crete and Greece. But, and this is where everyone is falling on their faces, there is obviously a second migration of farmers into Europe, once again to Serbia. Notice I'm repeating, Serbia. These are the people who eventually spoke Proto-Indo-European. They came from south-central Anatolia. Like the people there, they live in huge settlements, damn near cities actually, unlike the Starchevo. They're already out of the Stone Age. When they show up, they're already metallurgists, unlike the Starchevo. And they create striking human figurines, nothing like the Starchevo. They're called the Vincha. Later, they clearly migrated up to Romania and western Ukraine, the steppes of Russia, folks, where they're known as the Cucuteni or the Tropilian, depending on which country their sites have been found in. The obvious successor culture to the Starchevo is the linear band Keramic culture further to the northwest. Later, some of these Vincha descendants migrated down to Crete. They were much more advanced than the natives, and I'm confident they became the leaders of the future Minoan civilization. They came in through the Cyclades Islands, and we recently found out they also controlled the Gulf of Izmir. This is at the foot of Mount Ida. And down in Crete, they took the biggest mountain there by far and renamed it Mount Ida. I have more evidence, but this isn't the time or place for that. Needless to say, one does not go about renaming a major geographic feature like a mountain unless one controls that mountain. The Y chromosome I got from my father is a J2a, and that second group of farmers, I'm sure, had a lot of J2a. We are the original Indo-Europeans. Ancient DNA is coming in from Crete and Mycenaean Greece. J2a dominates. The oldest Indo-European language by far is in South Central Anatolia, where that second group of farmers obviously comes from. No evidence of invasion from the steppes of Russia, no evidence even of trade. J2a, baby. Iran, homeland of ancient Indo-European languages, dominated by J2a. Northern India, there are lots of different Y chromosomes there, but among all of them, the only men who are almost all Brahmin, top class, have a J2a Y chromosome. And the DNA is coming in. Their nearest relatives are in Serbia. Well, they didn't teleport there. Central Italy, Romans. J2a dominates. The concentration there is even higher than it is on mainland Greece. Only the islands of Crete and Cyprus have higher, and Crete is only marginally higher. It might not actually be higher at all. And all you have to do is look at a map of J2As to see who we are. The East is a mixed bag because we've been there since the last ice age. But in the West, we're blatantly the Romans. This is the Roman Empire at its peak. But if you take it back to the death of Julius Caesar in 44 BC, you see an even stronger family resemblance. I told you people went crazy when they started talking about us. They just can't bring themselves to believe we're the freaking Romans. We were building and maintaining empires long after the fall of Rome. Our last one made it all the way to 1922. The Ottoman Empire there on the bottom right. And if my brethren in Turkey had been allowed to remain Christian unmolested, the empire would have taken part in the scientific revolution, and it would probably still be massive today. One of my favorite accomplishments was getting to the bottom of whether or not the Phaistos Disc, discovered in 1908, was authentic, because if it were, that means the Minoans had printing and movable type thousands of years before the Chinese. But in the process of proving it was authentic, I was also able to crack open a window into Minoan culture. Because remember, there are at least two major streams feeding into that culture. There's the culture of the Minoan elites, which I'm dead certain is Aryan, but there's also the indigenous culture that was there for more than 3,000 years before the Minoans ever set foot on the island. Side B, seen here, was the key. I found Hatti, which was a language spoken in northern Turkey. Nobody knows what it means, but they know it when they see it, and I saw it. But on top of that, I was also able to show that this thing was a sun disk dedicated to Apollo. Can you see that the coils on this side belong to a serpent? You can even see its eyes and tongue. I noticed that head when I was working on the disc, but since it could have been an accident, I didn't say anything about it. It was a viewer who said the spiral on the disc was actually a serpent who made me wonder for the first time. And when I took a closer look at Indo-European epic poetry, I realized he was right. Among all the Indo-Europeans with a serpent-slaying myth, that serpent is slain by the thunder god, but not the Greeks. For them, he's slain by the sun god, Apollo. I believe they got that from the Minoans. I've since discovered there was another exception to the thunder god rule. The people in the Balkans also believe the sun god defeats the serpent. Well, that's where I say the Minoan elites are from, so it all makes sense. I also say the Romans are descendants of the Minoans. And according to linguists, the Latin-speaking Romans also spent time in the Balkans. Their word for horse, for example, equus, that's not Indo-European, that's Balkan. You see how it all falls in line? Another interesting discovery I've made is that the Minoans might have created our alphabet. I used to say they invented it, but now I realize that honor goes to the kingdom of Ugarit, which they had conquered as the Sea People. So they took over that system, jettisoned the cuneiform symbols that they were using, and replaced them with their own, up to half of which came from their writing system, Linear A. I can read out this fragment fine. I don't understand what it's saying, but I can read it. Notice the E looks like an A. Here's the earliest copy we have of the alphabet in full. It's supposed to have come from the Semites. I suppose some of the symbols here do show a family resemblance, but the common symbols I find here are also in Linear A. It existed at the time, so it might be the origin of the symbols we even see here. This is from the Gorilla text, that which follows. It's out of print, but you can get it for free online. Recul des inscriptions en Linear A by Louis Goddard. Put that together for Gorilla. There are differences, but they're always in favor of simplification. We always thought the letter A came from Aleph. I don't think so anymore. The Assyrians dramatically revised the alphabet, causing it to lose its strong Minoan flavor. But when the Greek alphabet came along, They added a lot of symbols to cover sounds that the Semitic languages didn't make. And guess what? The linear A was back, and this time it's stuck. I always wondered why the Hebrew aleph is sideways and the A is up and down. I think the Minoan descendants corrected that. It had probably been bothering them for centuries. This was a beehive originally. Aleph isn't the sound value A anyway, it's a glottal stop, like uh-oh. They had a B too, P, which obviously became the Greek phi. An even better reason to revive the Minoan symbol, yes? Minoan C became the Greek psi. Most of the time the symbol had some kind of curvature to it. I think it's a bone and marrow. And the Greek chi comes from the Minoan chi. These symbols don't just look alike, they sound alike too. That can't be a coincidence. It's a metal spoon tapping a metal container. That's the sound it makes. Ki, ki, ki. The X marks the spot of the actual point of contact. The Minoan descendants simplified it to that. Syzygy has always been my favorite word. Male and female are in syzygy. In an eclipse, the sun and the moon and the earth are in syzygy. I think this is a Minoan word. Se, a hand, or see that man? He might be sawing back and forth with another man. Speaking of, ze, a saw, ki, or gi, syzygy, a rocking back and forth, and a connection. And here's a cool Roman connection from Religion in the Room of the Chariot Tablets. This is from Knossos. Minoan deities, Pipituna and Quiricia. The Romans used augury to predict the future, the flight of birds. Pipiare is the Latin verb to chirp or to peep. And one of Rome's most famous hills is the Quirinal Hill, named after the god Quiritus, whose name comes from the Sabine Quiris, spear. The Sabine language is related to Latin. Quirinus is also known as Janus, who should instantly remind you of the most famous Minoan symbol of all, the labrys. The Minoans had massive colonies for centuries on Sardinia. You think a few of them made it over to the mainland? I told you people went stupid whenever they dealt with us. I'm pulling down low-hanging fruit here. Somebody should have figured that out decades ago. One final wonderful discovery. The Minoans had a literary tradition, including plays. There's a theater in the renowned city of Knossos. Have you read the book of Genesis? Then you've read some of their plays. To the left, Genesis 28, 10 through 19, Jacob's ladder. They even get the shape of the rock right. To the right, Genesis 30, 34 through 43. It's about a very odd struggle between Jacob and his uncle Laban. I bet if we get to the bottom of Minoan mythology about this, we'll get to the bottom of the Genesis story. Read those passages while you're looking at these images. They match perfectly. The fact that both of these images are about the same person in the Bible strengthens the case dramatically. Genesis 21, 9 through 19, the expulsion of Abraham's concubine Hagar. Once again, a perfect match. Genesis 18, 9 through 15, the announcement that Abraham's wife Sarah will have a baby. Insects often stand in for heaven's messengers in their miniatures. That third guy is cut off, but he don't look too human either. A couple of weeks ago, somebody commented on my videos that I'm a snob riding my high horse, and that I really shouldn't say we when I was talking about these people. And you know what? He's right. Even my own mother says I've always thought I was better than everybody else. But I'm like a tree bending against the prevailing winds. And the prevailing winds say, Bill, you are nothing and nobody. And why are you still here? People always thought it was okay to say and do the most outrageous things to me, even when I was a little boy. My sister, too. It's like we were born with a sign on our back that said, kick me. I was so happy to find my race. These women look exactly like me. And once upon a time, I had dark curly hair just like them. Their smiles remind me of my sister's. When my brother was a young man, he grew his hair out long. He looked like he could have stepped right out of one of these Minoan frescoes. We are a lovely race, and we were loved by God a long time before Abraham. Read Genesis chapter 20. He was not ready for us. And when I told you that we wrote parts of Genesis, I'm just confirming what the Bible itself hints at. And if you're really outrageously surprised by that, then you're probably not ready for us either.